Welcome to the Order of Malta's fourth webinar on human trafficking. The first two webinars dealt with religious working against human trafficking through action and advocacy. The third, last week, started exploring the health impact of human trafficking on victims with an emphasis on the trauma of victims. You can find the recordings of the last webinars on our website www.adelajda.org, also with subtitles in various languages. Today we shall focus on healing, on the healing of victims of human trafficking. I would like to especially thank three people that make our webinars possible: Sister Mirjam Beike and our webmaster Yves Reichenbach, as well as my assistant Felix van Lavik and also Karen Lee. We are happy today to welcome three new speakers: Mariana Meshi, director of the shelter Different and Equal in Tirana, Albania; Adelajda Alikaj, psychologist using art therapy, working in early identification of victims of human trafficking in Albania; and Irena Kraja, psychologist, coordinator of MWL Advice and Service Center of Tirana, Albania. She was also with us last week. We will have time for questions at the end of this webinar. You can ask your questions through the Q&A chat, and our moderator shall convey them to the speakers. This webinar is part of a series aiming at raising awareness, learning from each other in order to promote action at all levels: governments, international organizations, civil society, and of course academia and religious organizations. And now it's my great pleasure to give the floor to our moderator, Sister Mirjam Beike. Mirjam, you have the floor.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, good evening to all, from wherever you are joining us. Thank you, Michel, and a very warm welcome to our panelists for this webinar. Ms. Mariana Meshi, Ms. Adelajda Alikaj, and Ms. Irena Kraja. Thank you for being with us. We will start straight away with our first speaker, Mrs. Mariana Meshi. She is a professional with almost 20 years experience in addressing issues of trafficking and exploitation in Albania. She has an educational background in social work, and she has worked directly with survivors of trafficking for their protection and assistance through enabling, sheltering, exercising rights for legal aid, medical help, psychological support, return and reintegration. She is the executive director of the organization Different and Equal for 16 years, which is an organization that provides sustainable and comprehensive services for the reintegration of survivors of trafficking, abuse, or exploitation through shelter and community services, and is a member of the National Referral Mechanism. She has made contributions to several initiatives in Albania in the field of anti-trafficking, such as awareness activities, training, policy making, research, and standards of care for victims of trafficking in Albania. She has been a trainer in many training events organized for different professionals, such as police, social services, shelter staff, child protection units, health staff, employment offices, media, and so on. She has contributed and made presentations during several national and international activities. Mariana, you have the floor. Please unmute yourself.
Thank you very much, Mirjam. I would like to start the presentation making just a short description of the organization Different and Equal work on anti-trafficking. So the organization Different and Equal was established on May 2004, and since then we have contributed in different aspects of anti-trafficking. Can you go to the second slide, please? Thank you. We support a lot on the protection of the victims of trafficking, and we do this through our work on identification, on our work on providing the services for their reintegration. We support also through the support that we give to their dependents and their family members. And we provide these services in the long term. Besides the direct assistance for the victims of trafficking, we do a lot of work in improving the system of protection of the victims of trafficking in Albania, not just by participating in national rapport mechanism, but also in improving the legal framework, on improving the protection framework, like standard operating procedures, trainings, etc., with different actors. We do a lot of work lately, even for the children of the victims of trafficking, by providing after-school and PM care for them, but also other services that they might need. We do our work by a team, a multidisciplinary team composed of social workers, psychologists, doctor, lawyer, teacher, whom together works to address different needs that the victims might have. And we work 24 hours, 7 days a week. So we provide residential service through the shelter that is based in Tirana, but we support the victims of trafficking from all over Albania, who might be domestic victims or might be foreign victims that have been trafficked in Albania. Our services and our reintegration program is based, as I said, on a multidisciplinary approach, but also on a cross-sectorial approach. So we cooperate a lot with different institutions and actors in the field, who might be from government, from NGOs, from business especially, for their integration. Regarding the recovery and reintegration assistance for the victims of trafficking, we has established a program that is conducted through 3 phases of assistance. Can you go to the other slide, please? So the first stage of the reintegration is we called crisis intervention. The other one, the second stage is transit stage or semi-independent living. And the third stage we called the social inclusion stage. So in the first stage, we work since at the beginning when a case is referred in our program, we work to address the immediate needs and to do the right needs assessment. We believe that in order to give appropriate assistance for the reintegration of victims of trafficking, is very important to do the right needs assessment for this case. So besides addressing the immediate needs at the beginning, then we work to do a comprehensive needs assessment for each of the case that we assist. So we do the need, we assess the need for psychological interventions, the needs for accommodation, the needs for health services, the needs for legal support. And later on, when a case is stabilized and it's improved the psychological well-being, they're addressed the emergent health or security issues, then we work for improving life skills and for social and economic reintegration of the case. Then it starts the second stage we call of the reintegration, when we see and do a needs assessment of the skills that are needed for the case to be employed, or if the case needs and have the desire to go back to school, we support for going back to school. For those cases that would like and have to attend a vocational training based on the skills, on the desire, and on the labor market, we support to attend this vocational training. When the cases have finished vocational training, then we support for the employment. For this, we cooperate a lot with business companies, with employment offices, and so they help us in identifying the job placements for our cases, in orienting us in the job market. We support a lot cases to prepare for the world of labor, because like, for example, how to write a CV, how to search for a job, for those that would like to upgrade the skills, how to upgrade these skills. Also, in preparation for work, we do some short internships, and we do also coach for employment for these cases. When the cases are employed, then we support them in following up if there are issues in the labor place, how are the relationships with employers, with colleagues. This is based really in a trauma-informed approach, because we know that traumas have long-term impact in their lives, so they need coaching and support through the reintegration process. This is really very important. And besides that, we support even through the mentors, and my colleague Adela will talk later about this more. And we support a lot for then after they leave the shelter for the housing, especially for long-term housing. We support for establishing relationships in the community where they have choose to be reintegrated. For we give the map of services in order to access directly the services after they leave our program. And then now it starts the third stage of reintegration, the social inclusion. And this is a stage that our assistance is reduced because they are becoming more independent, so it's increased their contribution towards independent life. Besides working a lot with the survivors of trafficking for their empowerment, we have worked a lot to improve the context in which the reintegration happens. So to make awareness raising for the rights of the victims in order to avoid stigmatization, because we know that some challenges that victims of trafficking face through reintegration are stigma and victim blaming. So we have done a lot of work to improve this in communities. We work a lot with institutions in order to support them through capacity building and trainings. So I might say that in order to have a successful reintegration, besides the hard work that we have to do and should do, everybody, with the victims of trafficking, we should do a lot of work in improving the context in which the trafficking happens.
Thank you, Mariana, and it was very interesting, and I think we start to understand why reintegration process takes a long time, because all the package of services that are needed. Our next speaker will be Ms. Irena Kraja. Her first degree is in psychology. She holds a Master of Arts in Counseling and is specialized in cognitive behavioral therapy. She has been employed over the past 9 years in the Mary Ward Loreto Albania projects, working with women and girls in rural areas of Albania. Since 2016, she is a coordinator of Mary Ward Loreto's Women Advice Service Center of Tirana, ASC. During her work, she develops the initial identification of presumed victims of trafficking and victims of trafficking at the Women's Advice and Service Center, and works throughout their reintegration programs. She develops psychological counseling and therapy sessions with women and young adults. She assists with the Albanian victims in the shelters of Medai Trust in United Kingdom through online assessment and counseling, and when possible, directly in the safe houses. She is also providing psychological evidence to support the process of asylum-seeking applications. Irena, you have the floor.
Thank you, Mirjam. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to be here for the second time and to share again my experiences, but now in a different light. So I'm going to talk today about trafficking and trauma, and more specific, in intercultural approach. As Mirjam introduced me, I work for Mariana Meshi in Albania, and the experience that I'm sharing today is the experience gained in this foundation, gained working directly with survivors of human trafficking in our advice and service center, but as well as working in collaboration with Medai Trust in UK and providing online counseling for Albanian survivors in UK. So, what is human trafficking? I don't intend now to do a training about human trafficking, but we know it is a serious crime and a grave violation of human rights. It includes act, recruitment, transport, transfer, harboring, receipt of person through threats, using force, coercion, abduction, abuse, or of power or vulnerability, or giving payments and benefits. The purpose is for exploitation, including prostitution, including sexual exploitation, forced labor, slavery, or similar practices, other types of exploitation, removal of organs. So when we ask what is human trafficking, this is the technical explanation. And this helps us to know how to identify a human trafficking situation, but we have to know as well, how does human trafficking feel? And when we ask survivors, they are not able to give a definition of what it is and how it feels, but they can explain through some words like terror, prison, feeling guilty, feeling lost, feeling dead. I wouldn't wish it even to my worst enemy, feeling like a product in the market, I'm worthless, I hate myself, I'm broken, nothing helps, and many other words that explain how like the horror of human trafficking. What should we know about survivors? First of all, we should know that we have victims and survivors, and that there is no single profile of a victim of trafficking. They can be any race, they can be from any country, can be from any culture, any economic situation, but we know that traffickers have some, let's say, they know where they can pick a victim of trafficking. They know what are the characteristics that makes them vulnerable. We need to know as well that human traffickers are survivors of trafficking, but as well survivors of trauma. So these two cannot be separated. Survivors might have previous traumas as well, not just trafficking trauma. The rhythm of overcoming trauma varies from one person to another. They need their time. Healing feels like a messy process and feels like it's quite impossible. As much as we want for them to heal as soon as they can, it's not up to our will. We can help, we can help it to proceed at the time, but it doesn't happen just because we have a fixed program. For example, 6 months of healing from trauma. They might not be immediately compliable with shelter regulations. They might not trust people that try to help them. We need to know as well that the children of survivors of human trafficking can be affected of the trauma of their parents. When their parents didn't overcome the trauma or the anxiety and fears, then the children learn, gain some learning behaviors and some learning coping mechanisms. They hold a belief system, which is important to be understood, and they hold a social and cultural background. But the way the brain processes memory is the same in any culture, is the same in any country. When we face a normal event, how does the brain process events? It goes to working memory. So the normal event, the stimuli, is processed in working memory and then in long-term memory. When we face traumatic events, it bypasses working memory and goes directly to long-term memory. And that's why trauma feels, and this leads to post-trauma, and that's why it feels like it's not easy to overcome it because of the thoughts, the feelings have not been processed. There are some misconceptions about post-traumatic stress disorders, which seems like these are in all cultures. It depends whether the survivors know that they are going through PTSD or not, but about the way they feel, they create these misconceptions, like time heals the wounds. This is not true. Time doesn't heal, it takes time to heal. It is impossible for me to heal, nothing works. This is as well a misconception. Although they feel like nothing works, it doesn't mean that it will not work. If I avoid talking about trauma, I will forget about it. As well a misconception. I will never have a normal life, or I am completely broken. This is not true. It feels like, but no, we need to tell them and we have to show them, maybe not in therapy, because saying them, no, you survived, you will do it. It's not really the best therapeutical way, but we need to show them that, no, you survived. And one person can fully recover from PTSD. It takes to build a mindset and it takes to build a life after trafficking. We can help them to build the mindset through different ways. We can help them build a life after trafficking, and how do we do that? First of all, we have to care. In our work, we should show caring and considering work as a mission, being dedicated, believing and caring human values, respect diversity, being trained constantly, and being authentic. What our clients can do best is recognizing when we are authentic or when we are not. So if we show these aspects in our work, we can feel that missing piece of the puzzle. Trauma-informed approach or trauma-informed care means understanding the physical, the social, emotional impact of trauma on the individual as well as on professionals who help them. So both parts are very important. This provides protection and decrease vulnerability. So first of all, it's important to provide safety, and then help them feel safe. because we can provide physical safety, but do they feel safe? Then is trustworthiness. It's important to build trust, let them have the choice. Then is collaboration and empowerment. Being culturally sensitive and or intercultural approach is very important. In the shelters, there are not survivors from the same country or from the same culture. And when I mean intercultural, I don't only mean from one country to another, but as well within a country from one area to another, which may differ in culture or social norms. The first difference is language, even the way how people say hello. And when they are all in a house with different languages and not knowing the language that is used in the shelter where they are, it's the first barrier. Everybody who comes from different cultures, they carry with them their rituals, the tone of voice, body language, the way of dressing, spiritualities, food, coping with emotional distress. Sometimes it is learned in the culture. Shame, how they deal with shame and guilt, inferiority versus superiority, how they handle rejection, rewards, and punishment. Why is important being culturally sensitive? Because it recognizes the importance of race, culture, beliefs, values, attitudes, religions, language in the life of the client. If we take, for example, rituals and religions, working with the Albanian survivors that are sheltered in UK, they carried the rituals from Albania there. For example, starting from everyday rituals, doing housework, cleaning, and this is very important for them, for let's say one culture. If other girls in the house do not have the same daily rituals, there is a clash between them, and this can bring some insecurities, because we do some rituals because we feel safe by doing this. And when we are not surrounded by the same, we can feel a bit more insecure. Tone of voice. Some cultures speak loudly, some others speak with a low tone of voice. And for example, for a survivor, speaking loudly might be perceived as abusing and might remind of traumas that she has been going through. Let's say even food that is used in different countries doesn't smell the same. And who is not used with a kind of food, even this can be a problem in the shelter. The way of dressing, how superiority and inferiority, which we know it's always like our war. We don't want to feel inferior, we want to feel superior. How do we show it? And imagine in a shelter, let's say with at least 10 survivors who are going through this inferiority and superiority, how this can impact each other. How they handle rejection, for example. No doesn't have the same meaning in every culture. Saying no to Albanian survivors in UK is like is perceived by them like don't ask me again, or you asked me the wrong question. Maybe saying to somebody that comes from another country means like no means maybe. No, you have to ask again. Rewards and punishments. It is as well cultural. Maybe even saying no can feel like a punishment. Sometimes they think that I ask for something, it is a no, because yesterday I didn't do this. So how we relate actual situations with our belief system and with our way that we are used in a culture to interpret situations is very important to be understood. But we have to remember that trafficking, violence is not cultural. Sexual assault is not cultural. Abuse, stealing is not cultural. We respect diversity, but this is global. While working with survivors, it's important to train them to accept diversity. It's important to train them to communicate in a way that doesn't feel other nationalities feel like they are being attacked, or, for example, racism. If we ask people, many of them will say, I'm not racist, but while talking, while doing things, it can be perceived as a racism for somebody. And as well, it's important for survivors living together to understand that abuse is not cultural and it cannot be tolerated. This helps them to have a better understanding of what they have been going through, but as well a better understanding of how they interact with each other. And if abuse is perceived within a shelter, this might lead to re-traumatization or to keeping trauma alive and makes that the process of recovery goes very low. How can, these are only a few points of case management for clients for different countries and cultures. Is important, provide safety and help them feel safe, protect the best interest of survivors in your country. If we speak in a political way, sometimes survivors can be reintegrated in the country where they are rescued, or they can be deported to their country and go with the process there. But first, it's important to protect the best interest in the country where these survivors are rescued. To be very careful while applying interviews, using interpreters, or as well asking the survivors whether they are ready to handle it. Many interviews, time after time, can keep trauma alive. And it happens that while they give interviews, they are not able to give the whole information, or sometimes the information they give doesn't match with what they have given before, because due to trauma, they forget many elements of their story. Conflict management inside the shelter is very important. Provide the best support for asylum seeking, provide communication services in native language, and work in international network. I want to mention some specifics about my work with Albanian survivors in UK. They are, let's say, many of them don't know that they are survivors. They are victims. Or they don't accept that they are survivors because they don't believe that they survived and that they can make it. It is the trauma trafficking what have what has caused them this feeling hopeless and feeling depressed. But it's not just trafficking trauma, it's their whole life story. Maybe before they didn't know that they have been abused, but now that they live in a shelter, that they are being treated with respect and consideration, now they are thinking about the way they have been treated before. For example, a girl who comes from a rural area, who has lived in a patriarchal family, who has been raised believing that women and girls are properties, that domestic violence against them is normal, they thought that this is okay. After they have been trafficked from a lover boy or even from a family member, they felt injustice, betrayal, and abused. Maybe for the first time they felt abused, because that is something that they didn't expect. They did expect domestic violence in the family, but didn't expect trafficking. After they have been rescued, they suffered trafficking trauma, but as well thinking about what they have been going through in their childhood, or maybe even later, they have another trauma, and this leads to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. What is interesting is that many of the survivors first want to deal with trauma of domestic violence. It can be seen as a way to avoid facing trauma of trafficking, but it can be seen as well as a way going to the root of the problem, seeing that trafficking is not my real problem. My real problem is my family. Where have I been raised? Is my society, my culture, feeling abandoned, being abandoned. And then they want to work with trauma of trafficking. Before I go to thank you, what is important for us to understand here? If we work with them on trauma without them being ready, we risk to open a scar that they are not ready to work on it. Sometimes counseling, when we develop counseling, sometimes I don't ask them, what's your story? They can tell me their story. They can take their time to tell me their story. They can take their time to believe me, to have trust in me. And when they are ready, we work on trauma. Many of them do attend as well group therapy in UK, self-help groups, attend some private sessions, counseling, but talking in another language is difficult for them. It is very important, it's crucial, the communication, the words, and the ability to express themselves, but as well the ability to understand what somebody else is telling to them. Even when there is an interpreter, they feel like the connection is between them, the interpreter, and the psychologist. So not them and psychologists. And I've noticed in sometimes that the better connection they have is with the interpreter. So they speak more about the interpreter, like she's good, he's a good person, he is very generous, he treats me very well, the way she speaks, and less times about the psychologist, which is understandable because the communication is not direct, because there is this language barrier. In cases when the therapy is directly in PTSD, working with PTSD. Some of them might leave therapy, or they go to therapy just because they are sad. So they are advised, they have been advised to attend therapy, but they don't feel ready for it. They haven't built their mindset yet for that. And sometimes it's okay if we give them time and we all work as a multidisciplinary group to help them build a mindset and believe in the future. But as well as giving them this awareness that although facing the trauma is very difficult, it's better facing it now than facing it for the rest of the life. Any kind of therapy, any kind of psychological work works. It's counseling, it can be cognitive behavioral therapy, art therapy, it can be meditation, any spiritual activity that they might attend. Sports can be as well. So we cannot say which therapy is the right one. We usually use personalized, individualized techniques for any of our clients. So I cannot say which one is the best. The best is the one who works. And I would thank you for your attention, and I'm glad to answer any question when it's the right time.
Thank you so much, Irena, for your deep respect, for your empathy and compassion you have for survivors of trafficking, but also for still victims of trafficking and trying to help them to be not a victim anymore, but a survivor. You spoke about therapies. Some are the best therapy is a therapy that is working, but I know from the organization Different and Equal that they have special therapy that is art therapy, and art therapy will work also for several of the survivors of human trafficking. And so we thank you, Mariana, and it was very interesting, and I think we start to understand why reintegration process takes a long time, because all the package of services that are needed. And I immediately pass to Adelajda. I want to present Adelajda to our the listener, the attendees. And as we see a little bit more than the other listeners, we have participants from Morocco, Nairobi, Albania, New England, Italy, France, Scotland, Washington, Cyprus, Fribourg in Swiss, and Mexico, and more. So we are covering a big range of listeners, and we are very happy about this. Now to Adelajda. Ms. Adelajda Alikaj has a background in psychology and has worked for 4 years directly with victims of trafficking in the organization Different and Equal. She has served and made contributions in different roles in the organization, organizing art therapy sessions, which is a form of psychotherapy that uses arts as its primary mode of expression and communication. Also, she has been in the role of peer mentor for 2.5 years, providing personal support and assistance with the navigation of daily stressors, and has served as a role model for girls who need help and were part of the Different and Equal reintegration program. Currently, she is working with a mobile unit in Tirana and has an active role in the early identification and referral of victims of trafficking and possible victims of trafficking. Adelajda, you have the floor.
Okay, I will start my presentation. I will focus on the activities organized in framework of psychosocial assistance. The slide is preparing. Okay, all these activities aim at the psychological well-being of the beneficiaries. We have psychological and psychosocial counseling, also art therapy and occupational therapy, and relaxation techniques. Here are some quotes about from beneficiaries who have taken counseling or have been part of art therapy sessions or occupational therapy. Counseling has helped me to relieve emotionally. Irena said something about traumas and explained it, and we are in another step on the assessment and the form of the assessment we do in which aim the psychosocial assistance. I have been taking counseling sessions, and I have understood a lot of things that happened to me, and I have realized what I want to do in the future. Another beneficiary says that, and now I feel less anxious because I have talked about things that I haven't talked before. I used to keep it all for myself, which is so typical in persons who have been victims of trafficking, to not talk with other persons and to keep it all for themselves, which harms and causes a big damage with the time that passes. Also, express about art therapy has been especially useful for beneficiaries found in difficulty, which have been less inclined to express themselves verbally, because not all the people have the same have the same capability to express themselves. For some people, it is easier to express through art. Expressing themselves through art, beneficiaries have been helped to find in themselves things that in other circumstances have not been able to understand or even talk, and about things or situation happened in the past. These sessions have helped the beneficiaries to recognize and to process the emotions and the feeling they have been struggling with in order to begin the healing process. Research about art therapy. Art therapy is a very popular intervention for people who suffer from depression, from anxiety, different traumas, schizophrenia, low self-esteem. And in art therapy, we kind of use a brain's ability to adapt and to give a positive information on a variety of topics like security, growth, control, peace, hope, purification, courage, which are some topics that have been damaged through a trauma. And through art therapy, it helps a lot the victims. But how can art therapy help? Research have found that the traumatic memories are stored in the right hemisphere of the brain. So speech is located in the left, and art is the left is a right brain activity. So sometimes it is easier for people who suffer from PTSD to draw about their trauma rather than to talk about what happened. Through art, also art therapy is very used with children who can process their trauma in a safe place and not threatening. They also can apply words to their physical creations, to their pictures they do, reintegrating the left and the right hemisphere of the brain. Art therapy is about creation, is about creating and is healing because it strengthens the connection between your mind and your body, and also art therapy uses creative thoughts and actions like drawing, painting, coloring, and sculpture. For PTSD recovery, art helps process traumatic events in a new way of experiencing it. Some of the goals during our work are addressing and treatment some of the issues that affect and hurt the beneficiaries the most. With the help of the psychologist, individuals often create expressive art portraying their thoughts and feelings. For many, this creative outlet is a vital component of healing trauma. Here are some steps that are connected with healing from trauma. Finding strong values on self, putting new goals for the future, which is so important to create, to make the people who have been a victim of trafficking or who have suffered from trauma, to set new goals and look at the future. This is really helpful for the healing process. Also, forgiveness is another component that helps healing from trauma. Mourning from the loss, the loved one, functioning, dreams, plans, identity, etc. Healing from trauma also is a holistic process that involves practical, emotional, and education or training. Healing from trauma is also connected with new experiences, with things that a person can share with others. Also about thinking and imagining the future, because the people who are suffering from trauma usually have a problem to imagine a future. They stop thinking about future or new goals, or so it is a really important step. Adapting new routine is also connected with healing from trauma, and in our daily work, adapting new routines and making people have these new routines and get used to new lifestyle is a very important thing we work daily. Reinsertion into society and normalized life. This is also a very important topic, because sometimes the victims of trafficking, or also people who have suffered from a trauma, have become distant about the society, and they feel themselves not connected with the society and not in a normal life. And we need to work with that again. Transformation of traumatic memory into narrative, integration into biographical memory, processing emotions, body states, and correction of damaged thoughts. This is also important, and psychological help makes that mostly the work in this topic. It's made by the psychological support, which is also so important when we talk about healing from trauma. The path of activities in to heal from trauma. We have first art therapy, We talked about some, and we will show some pictures and more practical work we do in Different and Equal. Art therapy and occupational therapy. Also, one of the things that we do is involving in physical sport or activities, in relaxing activities also, such as volleyball, basketball, self-defense, and yoga. Also, music helps, and it is a form of art, and we use it like art therapy, let's say. Also, music helps a lot. Kitchen and cooking also, and self-care, engaging in the design and implementation of awareness campaign. Peer support and social activities too, and engaging in professional courses also. About art therapy and occupational therapy, art therapy is used as a tool for self-discovery, and it is used to go inside emotions, thoughts, and feelings, sometimes easier than talking. There are some pictures and some creations of girls we work and beneficiaries and girls who are part of Different and Equal reintegration program who have been victims of trafficking. Also, some other creations and pictures. We have a quote from a beneficiary. "I have never liked painting, but here I feel relaxed when I paint. Yes, it is true that some people, when we first present art therapy and we explain what we do there, they hesitate in first place, because I am not a good, I can't paint, or I'm not as good in painting. But they feel relaxed, they enjoy what they do, and they enjoy the final work on when they do things they feel proud of, and they discover new things, things they can do. Another quote from a beneficiary: "I wasn't aware that I liked art so much and that I could create so beautiful bijoux. In the beginning, I didn't even want to get involved." That was what I was talking about. But with they concentrate in this work, and it is a very good form of even meditation, and the effect that they have in the stress relief, and it is very, very good. This is relaxing activity that gives me the opportunity to be creative. They discover this part of themselves. They can create beautiful things. They can be creative. And through art therapy and occupational therapy, they have all the possibilities to create things they want and they like. Also, when people bought at the fairs the things I have created, it gave me a kind of happiness that made me feel appreciated. Some people buy things in the fairs that girls have created, and they really feel happy and really appreciated for this. It is very good moment when we do the fairs, and all the things the people like the things that girls create. They feel really appreciated. About sport activities and physical activities such as volleyball, basketball, we engage in self-defense courses, and yoga they practice and like a lot. Sport access mind and body to promote healing, which is the connection of sport and stress relief is It is so important even in the process of healing from traumas, which helps a lot. Also, the music, as we mentioned, I have a difficulty to speak about what happened to me, says one of the girls. No one knows my feelings as I do, but when I sing, my voice is strong, is powerful. It says everything, my wounds, my sorrows, and my past. This sentence says a lot about how it works and the impact that art and music has in the expressing themselves, in the expressing of oneself, and expressing the emotions is one of the most important steps in healing from trauma, because the emotions have been suppressed for a long time, and finding a way to express them, it really starts we start the journey of healing from trauma, which is so personal and individual. But using these tools we push them in a softly way through art to start healing and express the emotions for so much long suppressed. Kitchen and cooking, it's something girls really enjoy, and I used to think I did not even know how to cook, but now I have created so many recipes that I think in the future to make a kitchen book, says one of the beneficiaries, exploring with new things and beautiful things as kitchen and cooking is. It is very relaxing and activity, and it's like a therapy. Kitchen and cooking is like therapy, and girls enjoy a lot doing this. And they in the quote, the girl in the quote have strength, and the self-esteem has because she thinks they can make a kitchen book, which she feels appreciated and brave enough in what she does. Also, the passion for cooking pushed us to open in 2013 the only bagel stores in the city, which is going good, and we are so happy to have bagels in the city. And it is with all the devotion and all the love that girls and people who work there give, and it is really good that we have it. Self-care also is very important in self-care. When we pay a lot of attention to self-care, because self-care is self-love, and self-love is very important to know your values and to protect yourself. The mirror for me is like a therapist. One of the beneficiaries says, the more beautiful I become, the more I love myself, and when they start loving themselves, they feel more powerful. Before I came here, I felt guilty if I tried to look beautiful, but now I have promised myself that I would not neglect it anymore. It is part of our culture that we may feel guilt when we look beautiful, especially girls, and a lot of girls report that in the conversations, or they reflect in the way of acting, and it is so important. We pay a lot of attention to self-care because self-care is self-value also. And our culture has not done the best to give that self-care, to learn that self-care, also self-value to the girls. Engaging in the design and implementation of awareness campaigns. It is not new that girl that all the beneficiaries in different and equal are active participators also in the campaigns and the awareness in the awareness campaigns. Some of the quotes are I am like you, I retook back my life, you can do too. There are some slogans we had in awareness campaigns. And we work together very close with the victims of trafficking and the beneficiaries in our organization to concept all the awareness campaign and what we want to express. It's what girls express to us, and then this is really helpful for us, and it is really it is real when girls say these words about the awareness campaign. And there are some of the work in this picture. There are some of the works the beneficiaries have done. Different photos from the awareness campaigns, slogans. I'm at the last slide. It is a video. Maybe Mariana has something to say about this. Time to talk, break the silence, ask for help.
Yeah. Yeah, this is one of the videos that the group of survivors that we support designed in the last campaign that they did it to address the sexual violence and trafficking to youth. So besides designing other tools, they designed this video in order to encourage the victims of sexual violence or trafficking to talk. So this is they even participated together with the company in the process of filming and of making this video, and this has been really so empowering for them, and they are so proud that they have contributed through these campaigns and that even for this video. So maybe Felix can help us to
Thank you. So we're happy that we had Adelajda and to present this and this impressive, very impressive film introduced by Mariana. So I think we are very full of information and also very touched because this is emotional. This is really very heavy to take in. So as we had the last webinar, I would propose now we will have a short time to watch to a series of paintings made and created by victims of trafficking, and we will hear what they want to tell us. And during this time, you can think about your questions, and we have the Q&A box, and you can put the questions in the Q&A box. And after some minutes, when we have meditated and seen the message of the survivors of trafficking, we will come back to the questions. The victim. Being a victim feels like a book's torn page. You fall into somebody else's game, you get disappointed, and you get lost. Pain. Something unexpected happened to me, and the experience I passed through was very painful. It is like dust into the heart, and it hurts your soul. The self. It is a mirror that shows you the way you are. Being you is the most sincere thing in the world. Memories. I have different memories of my life. I remember being with the people I loved when I received love, when I was happy. And I recall these moments with the hope that they happen again. Often I remember and ask myself, why did these happen to me? Exploitation. Exploitation suffocates your soul, your feelings, and your freedom. Sexual abuse. Sexual abuse is the exploitation of the mind and body. It is something we do not talk about. Abuse is like being buried and not being able to get out. Strength. Mind is the center of strength. A mind in harmony is the strength of life. The good and the bad. There are two doors in life, the good and the bad. They always come together, but the good experiences make you stronger to confront the bad ones. Love. When I have loved, everything goes well. It is the most beautiful thing in the world, the happiest. The past and the future. The past can help me repair the present and the future. The present makes me dream, so I am looking ahead. Control. It suffocates you. It's a trauma. It's violence. It's scary. Anger. Anger is a flame that burns you from within. You feel left alone with it. Tears. It's a branch where I lie sometimes. My tears are for me, for my family, for my son. The tears are because I didn't want the life I was living. Support. Oh. When I needed it, I have appreciated any support. Even if it was hold broken umbrella, support made me not feel the rain, the cold and the storm, and to keep on walking. I have been in a difficult situation, wet, sad, and alone. Support was worthy to me when the persons offering it have walked by my side with me. Loneliness. Loneliness is the ugliest thing in the world. You feel despised, abandoned, unappreciated. Now we have some questions, and I think I will give some to give you the possibility maybe to share what you want to speak about. So there was a discussion about dissociative identity disorder, what is related to post-traumatic disorder, but even deeper and related to childhood trauma. And maybe you can elaborate on this a little bit more if possible, but I think it's going very deep. Then there is a question about what are the major challenges for each of the speaker after all these years working with enslaved people, survivors of human trafficking. And have you noticed specific trauma symptoms among victims of trafficking, other than trauma symptoms in general? That means other specific symptoms for trauma in general. It's asked by Dr. Zeina Chemali, a psychologist at the Comité contre l'esclavage moderne in Paris. So the three ideas is first the dissociative identity disorder, then the major challenges of each of you, and specific trauma symptoms among victims of trafficking. So just if you feel to answer to one or two of them, you can take the floor. I don't know if somebody of you wants to start. Irena? Or yeah.
Yeah, okay. I wanted to say that it's a good point. So the commenter made a good point on did, because complex trauma, childhood traumas do lead to personality disorders, but not all the time. And when it can lead to dissociative personality disorder, it can lead to borderline personality disorder, bipolar, it can many from the disorders. But as long as I am not expert in diagnostification of disorders, but I can say that whatever the disorder is, when we work with clients, we see the issues they bring, we see what they need to work on more than what a disorder it is. Of course, knowing the disorders, knowing the way of treatment, and knowing the specific symptoms, how to treat the techniques are very important. But at the end, since we work with the issues and how to help them, especially when we work in the shelters, we are not all psychologists. I'm a psychologist, and I can say that I'm not an expert in diagnostification. So other co-workers that are not in this field, for us it's important to see the pain, the trauma, the consequences that it has led. But I think that it's a very good point, because it's important to talk about mental health issues as consequences of childhood trauma, as well as personality disorder or psychotic disorders that can come as a consequence.
Thank you a lot. Now, if Mariana or Adelajda want to name maybe a major challenge that you faced. Yeah.
Thank you, Sister Imelda, for the question. It's a very challenging work indeed. Even I have almost 20 years and still is very challenging. So if challenges at the beginning were more on the knowledge, how to do it and when, etc., it's always a risky work. So security, it's a challenge for every professional that works in this work. It's another challenge is that you might be exposed to secondary traumatization. And I would like to mention here that we as organization provide supervision and support for the staff. And I think every service provider should do this, because otherwise it will be very difficult to go on, and the staff might risk to be exposed by secondary traumatization. Other difficulties are that sometimes you feel alone because there are many gaps in the system. I mentioned that is a multidisciplinary approach, and cross-sectorial collaboration is very important, but you don't find the response you need or the help you need by the system. So all these gaps in the system sometimes make you feeling that like you are fighting the fight alone, and how to go on. So even to find the courage to go on when you feel alone, sometimes it's not easy. Other issues are that you are exposed even to health issues also, because you work with a population that is has many health problems, and even those diseases that might be transmitted easy. So even to be careful in this aspect is very important, and to train and to increase the skills of the staff in this aspect is important, but also to provide the right support. Also, funding to continue this kind of work is always very challenging, and I talk from the perspective of a director of an NGO that it has been very hard and very difficult always to continue providing 24-hour services 7 days a week, but especially on the quality that you would like to do this work. I'm stopping here. Thank you.
Thank you, Mariana. We got another new question, what I think is very interesting. Does hope play a role in recovery? If so, how, especially for some who can still connect with God and or their religious traditions, where hope is something that goes beyond this life, or perhaps a sense of being abandoned by God or a higher power undermines such a sense of hope? Can you say something? One of Maria? Yeah.
I think, yes, hope is very important. Even sometimes it's not easy to find hope, but as we are saying, with all the support of these professionals, and Irina mentioned the spirituality support also. And so, yes, we have seen that for those that find the trust in God and that can exercise also the religious. I'm talking not as a psychologist, but as a person that worked long with victims. Find it more easily to have the resilience and to go on. But Irina and Adela are specialists and psychologists, so they can.
Yes. The question about does hope play a role in recovery? It does play a very important role, hoping and believing. It's the belief system, how we build the mindset and how we work through it. The commenter mentioned feeling a sense of being abandoned by God or a higher power undermines such a sense of hope. So it is a sense of abandonment. Abandonment is one of the issues that lead us to feeling not just hopeless, feeling lonely, and at the same time feeling incapable of doing things, and being abandoned, feeling abandoned by God. For people who believe and they have a strong belief in God, is like it's the biggest loss that they can perceive they have. But it is important as well to understand that how we believe that things happen, whether things happened to us or things happened for us. When we are at this mindset that things happened to us, it is more probable to stay in the victim mode. When things happened for us, we build more hope, believe in a recovery, and get out of a victim mode and heal and change the life and perspective of how we see things.
Thank you. Very comprehensive answer. So I know that our time is going to end, but there's a very interesting question also. Are there any international communities of practice for mental health professionals in anti-trafficking work? Also, any international networks for shelters and psychosocial programs to share good practice, challenge solidarity? Do you know about it?
I can talk for shelter networks, as we are members of global networks of women's shelters, and we share with them also. we haven't found international community of practice for mental health professionals. So this is a very good question that is raised, and is very good to search more in order to help more the professionals besides what we support here. So we mostly has exchanged and shared or trained by international professionals, but to have a community of practice internationally, at least from our organization, we didn't experience with mental health professionals. We do community of practice in general for reintegration work and shelter work, but it's a good question, this indeed.
Irena, you are looking, yeah.
I was looking actually at the question, have you noticed specific trauma symptoms among victims of trafficking? I've noticed that except flashbacks, unwanted memories, and nightmares and anxiety, panic attacks, there are some hallucinations as well. And which I mentioned, safety is important, but now I'm doing an interpretation of what this might be, because safety is very important, but trauma, although the event is not present anymore, the fear is present. The object of fear is not present anymore, but the mind creates an object of fear. And I've noticed that some of them during the night do see ghosts, things moving in the house, because it is a perceived threat. They know that there is not any realistic threat in the house, but due to fear, the brain produces some visions that are not real, that reinforce the fear that they have. So hallucinations have been present, not in terms of having an impact on the mental clarity, although many of them know that I had, or they can say that I had a hallucination. So it's not an it's not an indication of losing mental health, mental clarity. Yeah, but this is one specific that I've noticed.
Thank you very much for answering these various different questions. So comprehensive, and thank you for the wonderful presentations. We have a lot of positive echo also in the chat about the people who attended from all over the world. So thanks to the panelists for this interesting webinar. And I also want to thank the participants for their questions, for their chat, for their being with us and their interest. And thank you for joining us. We want to follow up this webinar, and we are hoping to stay in contact with you after this webinar. We will inform you about the next steps, about next webinars or activities. And with these words, I finally hand over to you, Michel, to close the session.
Indeed, thank you very much, Mirjam, but thank you to all presenters and also to all participants for their very interesting and even, I would say, moving presentations. And also, Mirjam, your pictures, yes, could not leave us indifferent. We were really taken by this process of hope, as you said, hope and healing. And indeed, it's a collective learning experience, and we hope to continue this next year, and definitely we have some ideas. The first is to remember the feast of Saint Bakita, which is also the International Day of Prayer and Awareness Against Trafficking in Persons. And so on the 8th of February, we probably will organize another webinar. We also have an upcoming webinar already planned on the 13th of April, the role of consumers in preventing and combating human trafficking. Indeed, everyone can play a role in preventing and combating human trafficking as a consumer. And in the meantime, I encourage all participants to download the handouts of this webinar, which you can find next to the Q&A tab, and to visit the ChristusLiberat.website with a collection of best practices and an access to a free online course on human trafficking for helpers. And indeed, we also are planning other webinars next year. As you can see on the screen, these webinars are not yet, we don't have the dates, we don't have all speakers, but nevertheless, we think it's important not to forget also the legal aspect, the international prosecution of human trafficking. Where do we stand 20 years after the Palermo Protocol, which is a protocol additional to the Convention Against Transnational Crime? Also, there is a medical side to it, the trafficking of human organs, and we should not forget this. This is a very unfortunately common and tragic side of human trafficking. Human rights and human trafficking, yes, because unfortunately in so many situations, human trafficking is the negation of all human rights, is a negation of human dignity, even at times a negation of human life. And also we are planning to organize, even if we have subtitles, in the recording of our webinars, we have subtitles. You can see those subtitles not only in English, but also in French and Spanish, Italian, Polish, and also in Japanese, and even in Dutch and in Chinese. So, but we are planning to organize a webinar in French, Écologie intégrale et esclavage contemporain. Definitely we'll put English subtitles for those of you who do not speak French. Human trafficking as a threat to international and domestic security, because it's not only an individual issue, it's not only an issue of some countries more than others. As you know, all countries are affected. But indeed, it should be taken more seriously by governments. It should be taken more seriously by international organizations because it's a threat to security. Then, as you know, one remedy to prevent and also to heal victims is education, is training not only of victims, training not only of helpers, but training of so many people. You know, immigration officers, police officers, judges, attorneys at law, they all need training in order to better understand what's happening with the victim, to not miss the target and actually not to prosecute the victim and actually to let the trafficker go. Then also an idea of Sister Mirjam, and I think it's very important, between decent work and forced labor, examining the continuum of exploitation. This year, we were celebrating the 100th anniversary, or rather it was 2019. We are celebrating the 100th anniversary of the ILO, International Labour Organization, but I think no time for celebration, but time for reflection and time for calling for action. And then also, most of us are believers and religions, not only Christianity, but also Islam, but also Judaism, but also Hinduism. All religions actually have a position against human trafficking. And it's not only important to take a position, to launch appeals, but it's important also to mobilize religious communities so that they would contribute to abolishing human trafficking, modern slavery. So actually, what I wanted to say is that I wish my best wishes not only for Christmas but also for Jewish or Muslim celebrations, and best wishes to everyone for the new year. And clearly, we are looking forward to seeing you and to continue this dialogue in the next month. Thanks again for being with us. Best wishes again to all, and see you soon online or in Geneva. Goodbye.